The last time Chief O'Brien's old man was on board, he found him chasing Nurse Stanton around a biobed in sickbay. Captain Picard mistakes 47 wine for 46, tisk tisk, and Worf has a beauty station. Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Sirach Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and today we're doing a review of Star Trek The Next Generation, Season 4, Episode 2, Family, written by Ronald D. Moore, the one and only, and directed by our pal, Les Landau. This is September 29th, 1990. Where were you? What's up, Sirach?
I'm good. How you doing?
Pretty good. September 29th. Shout out to my friend Stan the Man Balazer, whose birthday is September 29th, of Lithuanian descent. He is tall guy, plays volleyball a lot. I'm all right.
Shout out. Stan the Man. I have a friend named Stan the Man. That's usually
It's the rule.
That's the go-to nickname for
if you like
a friend
him.
named Stan. If you like him.
Yeah. Make a new plan, Stan. Or you can. It's another Stan thing. Paul Simon song. Anyway, so okay. I remember this episode. And what I remember most about this episode, oh, by the way, everybody check out this prune juice and chill shirt, because anytime they mention prune juice and Worf, you got to wear this cool shirt. But I remember this episode when I was a kid, when I first saw it. What sticks out to me was two old guys playing in mud. Wow. And I remember thinking, this fight scene looks weak. This is not believable. What's going on? This is not a real fight. This is what's happening, and then at the end you see that they're laughing and giggling, and I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. They were play wrestling as brothers. Okay, but I remember that first impression as a kid. I was like, what the hell is going on here? They're not punching. They were they were doing the, and then eventually it gets revealed, but it actually hit me very differently this time around. But Sirach, you've never seen this episode. What did you think?
I thought kind of your same reaction from how you remember it, which is, oh, two old guys wrestling. That's kind of what jumped out at me. I felt the same. I thought it was weird. What the hell kind of like unnecessary for me, the whole mud wrestling thing. I just thought not even necessary. It would have been like, maybe like a callback to Lucille Ball with the grapes. I think she had a wine grape episode where she was crushing grapes with her feet or something.
Yes,
to that effect.
Iconic episode. Yes,
a callback to that I would have been okay with, because they're on a wine. They've got a vineyard and they're talking about wine. So maybe a fight inside of that location, inside of one of those things where you stomp the grapes in, that may have been more appropriate, perhaps. I just didn't see the need for the mud. I felt like it just didn't seem. It was just bothered me. Actually, it seemed inappropriate and just not necessary. I was like, even kids would know better than like, hey, yo, bro, seriously, it's muddy over here. You wouldn't roll around in it extra hard. You would. But they seem to be enjoying themselves a little too much. I will say, though, that the curmudgeon brother of Jean-Luc played a great curmudgeon brother. And I thought that was good performance by him. In certain moments, just, his face being all shriveled up and angry and bitter all the time. Him not really showing any affection. I think when Picard walks up, he doesn't even really turn his back fully or even extend his hand to shake his hand. No greeting of hello, just kind of like, yeah, what are you doing here? Type of, over the shoulder, cold shoulder moment. So I think the way he played it with his body language, with his performance, with his facial expressions, definitely was believable for me.
Mm-hmm. I have thoughts on him as well, Robert, but just to finish up on that mud wrestling tickle town, whatever was happening, I think they were tickling, they were throwing little mud. There was one point where the guy, after they lay down and they play like footsies or something, then Robert like throws a mud pie at Picard, and Picard goes, oh, gasp, or something like that. That actually made me laugh. But I'll tell you, like, that for some reason, when I first saw it, it just made me, I wouldn't quite say as strong as uncomfortable, but I was just kind of like, what's going on? It was just weird to me. But now, watching it this time and expecting it and knowing what to expect, I actually found it to be a beautiful moment, to be honest. Like after the wrestle, like when they were just lying there and Picard, tries to get his Emmy again, saying, no, I wasn't strong enough and I wasn't good enough and all that. And, that's obviously a really nice moment and really beautiful. And I really felt it. And we could talk more about that a little later, about afterwards when the wife walks in on them, which was funny. But yeah, so to the acting of Robert, I only noticed it at the very end of this episode. There was a moment, I don't remember where it was, but it was towards the end of the episode where I was just like, it was when Picard was drinking wine and Robert says, careful, you're not used to drinking the real thing. So it's maybe like 15 minutes left in the episode. It just hit me right then. I was like, holy crap, this guy's a really good actor. Never noticed it until right then. He almost has a Lord of the Rings feel. Like he'd be great in Lord of the Rings or something like that. And I also noticed towards the end in the mud pit, he seemed to slip into an Irish accent. I'm like, okay, so he's a French character with an English accent that slips into an Irish accent. I was getting very confused, but other than that, I was actually really impressed with his acting. Very good character actor seemed.
Yeah, he gave me some kind of like Michael Caine vibes.
Ooh, yeah.
I liked his performance in this. I kind of jumped on it from the beginning. I just had other issues with certain other things that I didn't really think matched up well for me. And mainly it was how disheveled he looked right from the beginning. Um, it felt like they were trying to portray him as beaten up and worn down or something to that effect, or yeah, beaten up by life or something, like he was on his knees and picking out uh roots or whatever he's doing, weed from the plants, or checking the bottom of the plants, and on his hands and knees. He's got dirt on his face and dirty hands, and kind of it gave me the impression like, here's a guy that's almost down on his luck and just like trying to hold on to make something out of this thing that's not really productive, and trying to make it productive. But then when you pull back from it, it's like it's this luscious, beautiful, like, you know 400-acre. Like, it's not like a guy like sitting there trying to turn the soil and make his Jack and the Beanstalk beans grow. It's he's actually got this huge, big, luscious farm, with this vineyard that's
Yeah.
gorgeous. And so here's what I think they were trying to do. You know, when Picard first mentions going back to home with the scene with Troy, and she's kind of talking to him like, "Where are you going to go?" And he's like, "Oh, I was thinking of going back to my home in what is it,
La
Le
Bar,
Bar, Le Bar."
Eastern France,
Yes,
tiny town, Eastern France, by
yeah,
Germany and Switzerland.
okay. So it's a tiny little town. Um, but what the thing about it being a tiny town, when I think of it, the way he referred to it was as my home village. Okay. So the language that Ronald Moore used by describing it as a village
Mm-hmm.
makes it seem like it's uh, of poor means. Like when you think of a village, you don't think of affluence. You more of, you know, regularness, like just, people who are doing not as well in life economically.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so for me, the term village, when he kept saying my home village, and that was also paired with the wardrobe choice of this kind of drab color that he was wearing, which made it look like almost like a homeless kind of outfit. The way it was not, there was no detail, there was no ornamentation to the outfit itself. It looked very, the colors were drab, the fit was not exactly custom fitted. It's kind of one of those outfits that they have somebody wearing in the usual Star Trek shot when they cut to the center of the village and everybody's playing hacky sack and stuff.
Yeah.
So those combination of things kind of give it the air of this guy lives in a poor little village in a small little hut somewhere, off the, like just like this really meager and humble beginnings. And then you get there and it's got, this grandiose kind of Victorian place with a sprawl of a vineyard and,
Hired help.
fireplaces, hired help. Yeah. So
Yeah.
it's not a village per se, the way
His
it was
home
described to
is
me.
a village. his entire
Yes.
his
Yes.
home is the entire village, basically.
Yes. That's what I'm talking about. So when I'm like, this doesn't match up. Like he's walking down a road, and I'm thinking, oh, this is the road of the village. No, this is your own property.
It's his
You're on.
driveway.
It's your driveway. Exactly. So you know exactly who that kid is hiding in the bush. It's not like you're like surprised by one of these villagers.
That's funny.
So
Well,
yeah.
let me explain something to you, Sirach. As a Frenchman myself, all Frenchmen own a vineyard. That's just how it
Oh,
works. Every
oh well,
French
then that's
person, when you turn
yeah,
12, the government gives you your very own vineyard.
right.
Sometimes it's smaller, sometimes it's only like 40 acres, but
Oh,
so all French people, they get their free vineyard when they turn 12
hmm,
and a
right,
quilt. It's just a thing they
right.
do, and your first pack of cigarettes. When you're 6, you get your first bottle of wine. It's just the French thing. When you're
Yeah.
2, you actually get your first horizontally striped shirt and little sailor hat. So it's kind of
When do you get the cottage in the castle?
you have to build that yourself while drinking your first bottle of wine. It's this they have rituals. It's a
It's a rite
cultural
of
thing.
passage.
Yeah, it's a cultural thing. And then you lose to a war when you're 14. It's just kind of a thing that the French do. They lose wars. But anyway,
Can
but I
I
will
also offer? Oh,
go
go
ahead.
ahead, please. No.
I was just gonna say I will say, like, seeing that part, even though I know it wasn't shot in France, they did a good job
Yeah.
of finding something that looked French. And it did make me homesick for, the places that I've visited and the family that I visit and have been in France, mostly in the south of France, although this, I believe, is in the east. But it just made me feel like, I miss that. And I did look up where it was shot. And the home itself is in Encino, so not too crazy, very local. And the vineyard itself is in Lancaster. So people know that as like the high desert. It's, about an hour or 45 minutes north of LA. But anyway, so that's where it was shot.
Yeah.
I was kind of curious about that. What were you going to say?
No, I was curious about that too. Actually, I was wondering whose home they used. I thought maybe one of the producers, if that was maybe Magel's home or Rick Berman's home. I
Might
wondered
have been
about
Michael
that too.
Jackson. He lived in Encino.
Might have been. I don't know. But I did wonder about the house. But I was also going to say that without the reference that Troy had in the conversation with Picard about the Borg and what they, having to deal with the emotional impact of recovering from that experience. Without that conversation, I almost forgot what just happened, right? Like because the episode almost didn't give me enough of coming out of that to deal with. You know what I mean? I wanted to see more of Picard talking about that particular issue. Not so much as the climax and the end of this episode, but more like almost towards the beginning of the episode. First of all, it would have been nice to see him having to remove the bandages that we saw him
Yeah.
have on the last episode. So, kind of a bandage removal moment, right? With Dr. Crusher, she's like, well, today's the day. It's okay, and you should be 100% healed. That kind of conversation would have been great. Him looking in the mirror, kind of remembering that moment, saying, seeing himself back to himself again, feeling, trying to own his spirit back. That would have been a great intro for me leading up into this kind of getaway that they were trying to show me.
Yeah. Also, there are a few things there. One was I was realizing that this is kind of the first serialized part of Star Trek. The original series was not serialized. They have shot it in all kinds of crazy sequences, in fact. But the Next Generation never even had a two-parter until now. The first episode was an hour and a half, but it was not released as a two-parter. It was an hour and a half pilot, which is what a lot of shows did back then, right? The pilot movie, the premiere movie or whatever, and then it goes episodic. But this was the first time they had a two-parter, and this is almost kind of like the third. I mean, it's clearly serialized. This isn't like episode 11 of season 4. This is like the direct result of what happened with the Borg in the last two episodes. It's reminiscent of how Deep Space Nine in the fall of 93. Remember the season 2? You guys had like a 3-part thing about like the Bajoran terrorists or something like that at the beginning of season 2, episode 1, 2, and 3. It was kind of similar to that. Now, what Next Generation started off kind of here, obviously we know Deep Space Nine mastered with the serialization and all that, but it was interesting to see that this is the first kind of 3-episode arc. But also, when you mentioned Troy, it's kind of weird that Troy kissed Picard, right? Do therapists usually do that? Like they go like, hey, so I've had a little bit of improvement with my relationship with my father and this and that. Oh, looks like that's all the time we have. All right. Is, is that what they do? I don't know.
I mean, you got to pay extra, but if you get that package. No, I don't know. That was interesting to me. She said something else that kind of influenced her relationship with Riker as well. She said, "Oh, Will and I are thinking about going back to Angel Falls." She's like, "Oh yeah, Will and I are thinking about going back to," and Angel Falls sounds like a place that Will and her had a good time before. So
it's gigantic. It's this gigantic waterfall. But yeah, it does sound like that. Maybe they got lost in there, and who knows what might happen.
Yeah, so she kind of threw it out there that they were going to team up and have a little couples retreat moment. So there was a lot of stuff going on in this episode. But this is also the episode. So this is one thing that I wanted to jump out and say too. I've heard you talk about Worf's parents now for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard you mention the Rozhenkos, and that Worf comes from these Russian parents.
Mm-hmm.
this is the first time I got to see them, and so there was oh, that's this episode type of thing for me. That's what registered for me. It was like, oh, this is the we see Worf's parents episode.
Yeah, and I don't remember how many times we see them, not a ton through the series, maybe one or two more times. But this is the one that, we remember well. And it was really cute. I thought it was really cool that his dad was a chief petty officer and he goes up to Chief OBrien and he's talking
Yeah,
with him like old buddies. I mean, there's a lot to talk about with those two. Um, Also, I thought it was really cute that Geordi called him chief, even though he's
yeah,
retired. Like, I don't know, respecting older people that have been there and done that usually means a lot to them, and it's so easy for us to do. So just do it. Just treat them well, give them their respect, say nice things to them, treat them right, because it's like, I don't know, I have a soft spot for people that get older, they have a tougher time with things. Maybe they've served in the military and they have injuries or traumas or things like that. Whatever it is, like, you know, they're used to being respected. They're used to being big and strong. They're used to being this, and then it goes away, and it's really hard for them, And I know Sirach, you two are, pretty good about that, but it's just always nice to see older people getting respected and getting treated well, because they're a lot more vulnerable. But anyway, I just like that. Just that small thing. Geordi calling him chief. He didn't have to do that. He could have just called him Sergey, but I thought that was a nice touch.
yeah. I thought it was a nice touch as well. To me, that rings more true in the military culture of respect, and so I felt like, oh, this is accurate because this is um, maybe giving proper respect to older people is not what we do in the regular world, but in the world of the military, it's usually something that's done frequently. You honor somebody's service, you honor that they're retired and elder, and they've put in their work. So um, I thought it was also nice that Jordy walked around and he was kind of giving the tour. And he's like, it's 10 times more powerful than the other ship that you was on, and kind of like running him down through the specs. And I like that Mr. Rozhenko was also into ships, right? So he
Mm-hmm.
was like, he kept saying, I have the manual, I have this, I know the specs, I've done my homework on this stuff, and it just means that he has a passion for it, and I thought that was another thing that rang true for me. I liked it.
Another moment that the actor did that I really liked. Let's see if I can find his name. His name is Theodore Bickel. One thing that he did was at the end, like what you mentioned, when he was saying, "Oh, I still have the specs at home." He did the perfect job of, you see this thing closing, right? The doors closing, and him like staying in it until the very last second. That's a pro actor. He knows you're not looking at the person you're talking to. He's watching the camera, and he's watching when these doors close and the camera gets out of sight. He needs to follow it until that very last second. And he did it perfectly. I'm like, it's
Yeah,
it's again a small minor thing, but it shows experience. It shows that this guy knows what he's doing. He's a pro, and I was just like, oh, good job, dude.
yeah, good job. I felt like though the drama that was being written for his character and for the parents with Worf, it didn't resonate with me as being valid enough to warrant the response it was getting. It felt like I don't know. It wasn't believable for me. I wasn't buying that they're so concerned for Worf because of him being dishonored or
Yeah,
disaccommodation. It just didn't ring for me.
and therein lies the problem with having three plots. You can't quite oftentimes sink your teeth into each one as much as you would like. So you have to kind of brush over it or gloss over it and, hope that it works out. For the record, I think this is a great episode, very well written, but, there's some things that you feel like they could have added a little more oomph to it. But we'll talk about that on the other side of our break, as well as a really cool fan film connection here. Star Trek fan films were all the rage a few years back before new Star Trek came out. So we'll see what's up with that in a moment. On the other side, we'll be right back on The Seventh Rule